Hello everybody, Not Dead Yet here, and today we are finally doing a coaching up, so to speak, of my boy, Jonni Shreve. Jonathan, my man, listen. You need to post more boxing videos, okay? I've seen the little cock teases. That was a one hell of a voice crack, but I've seen the cock teases that you put on your Instagram stories where you're doing hand pads and stuff, and every time I see it, I'm like, come on, put out a video where you talk about boxing because I want to know just how good you are. I know, for those of you that don't know, Johnny and I have talked in the DMs a little bit. He's a very busy man, and we have not talked a lot by any scope of the imagination, but we have talked a little bit, and he said that he does do a little bit of boxing, so I want to know, how good are you? Because in one of your stories that you reposted from somebody else, it was only like a 15-second story, I saw that you started out in a orthodox position doing hand pads, and by the end of the video, you were in a southpaw stance. When people do hand pads, they normally stick to the boxing stance that they are most comfortable with, which means I have to ask, Johnny, are you a switch hitter? Can you fight both orthodox and southpaw? Because if you can, that is really interesting, because that is a very advanced thing to do, okay? I've been boxing for over a decade before I even attempted to switch hit, so I want to know. And if you are good, would you ever want to spar? Because I would love to see what you can do. Because in this video, the video we are reacting to is, as the time I'm filming it, his most recent video on Frank, whatever, Crossbones from Marvel Universe. And he says at some point in the video that this guy, this stuntman, wants to kick somebody's ass.
And boxing in all sports, the shoulders, very important to make sure.
Yo, Frank Grillo wants to kick someone's ass. Like, Frank Grillo's done so many fighting movies that the guy looks like he wants to kick someone's ass. Like, he's ready to knock somebody out all the time. Yo, we want to hit, like, you know, the front delts, you know, the side delts, the post, the rear delts. You know, but you know, boxing, you know, we got to box, you know, we doing all this all day long, right? So who cares about, you know, these side lateral movements? Boxing is going to do it in the first place, you know what I mean? Frank Grillo wants to kick someone's ass.
Right, and for me, when I hear I want to kick somebody's ass, like, I think I'm not just somebody who wants to be in a fight, but I think like true fighting spirit, boxing spirit, like the desire to step into the ring, right? And so, to me, how he acted in that clip is not fighting spirit. That is not what fighting spirit is to me. To me, what fighting spirit is it's this sensation. You can see it in a fighter. You can see it when it happens. It's the sensation that washes over you and it takes you over. Everything is different. They have this like almost psychotic look in their eyes, and they get this big smile on their face, and their movements are different. The way they act, it's this thing that almost possesses you, right? Because it happens when you're in the center of the ring, right? Or you're in the ring and you're staring across your opponent, and you two realize that you each have the power to knock the other person out. Each punch to the body has the power to make the other person drop to their knees and puke their fucking guts out. And that, in that moment, is the most exciting thing in the world, because it's your fight or flight that kicks in. Everything narrows. Everything kind of just, you're focused entirely on your opponent, and all your senses get cranked up to 11. Everything is heightened. And you guys go at it. It's everything you have, and there's punches that are whizzing by your head that you know would knock you out if they hit you. You take a body shot that think, damn, that would hurt, and then you fire back another one because you don't have time to think, really. It's all just reactionary. That is what fighting spirit is. And to me, what Frank, whatever his name was doing was not in any way indicative or reflective of fighting spirit. He was just showing what, you know, the stuff that he does. For me, it was just him explaining his routine and why he does it. True fighting spirit is that true fire that comes alive when you step into the ring, or when you think about it and you need it and you want it. I haven't stepped into the ring in like a year and a half, maybe even 2 years now, and I just, like, point being is, put out more boxing videos, man. I want to know what you know, I want to know what you're capable of, and I want to see how good of a boxer you truly are. And that actually brings us to the topic of today's video. Because in that critique of Frank's, I think it's Guerrero, it starts with a G, I'm not going to bother to look it up. In Frank's men's health training video, he says that he doesn't train arms, like bis and tris, vanity muscles, because that would be a hindrance in the ring. And I originally laughed at that, but then Jonni Shreve agreed.
A little shadow boxing, get the blood flowing, a little sweat going, loosen up my whole body. I don't do biceps, I don't do triceps. We do core, heavy exercises on the chest, squats, deadlifts, shoulders. But as far as the vanity muscles, it's not something, it actually is a hindrance to do biceps and triceps on the regular, the way a bodybuilder would.
Very, very true. Honestly, when it comes to, and I've coached, a strength and conditioning coach for boxing, and you don't want to train bis and tris at all, to be honest, when you're boxing as much. It is a vanity muscle in a sense in terms of being functional. When you're throwing jabs, straights, hooks, uppercuts, you don't want tight tension on those tendons so you can, basically tear your bicep, right? So it's good that he has that, it makes a lot of sense that why would I train those muscles when he's doing a lot of shadow boxing? Shadow boxing is a lot of elbow flexion and extension. You're basically throwing the punch out and throwing the punch in. If you're sitting like this all day long and just doing this and do whatever, you just do, a lot of this is flexing your arm. Oh.
Which is really interesting because I have been boxing for the vast majority of my life. Like, I am talking over 3/4 of my life, and I have been to all over the world. I have trained martial arts in China, I've done boxing and Muay Thai in Thailand, Hawaii, Vegas, Mexico, all over Canada, all over the place. I have done training everywhere, and I have met all kinds of different boxing coaches, and I've heard all the kind of BS stuff, the old school training, the women weaken legs rock, and like I've heard you should never lift weights at all. I started fighting when I was 5, and then I started lifting weights around 9, 10, so I'd already been fighting for about 5 years at that point, and my coach told me that I should stop lifting weights because it would stunt my growth, and too much muscle would slow me down. It would make it hard for me to move around in the ring. So I've heard all of these like kind of old school takes on boxing, but I have never heard don't train arms. Or that training arms would be a hindrance to you in boxing. Now, to be fair, I may be picking this apart a little bit because he does say you don't want to train arms like a bodybuilder, and that is true to an extent. You don't want massive arms. You don't want Jorgen von Strangle, like, oh, I've got Mount Everest between my forearms and my shoulders. I can't scratch my nose because my biceps are just too huge.
Muscles too huge, can't reach face.
No, you don't want that, right? But you do want, but training arms, I've never heard training arms to be a hindrance. I train arms 6 days a week. To be fair, I only train them for 4 sets of high volume, 10 to 15 reps, depending on what I'm doing. Recently, it's been 12 sets of 4 sets of 12 curls, 4 sets of 12 tricep extensions. But, yeah, and so my friends actually kind of make fun of me for it whenever I go and train arms. They're like, oh, you're just training arms for a pump. And it's like a yes and no, because that's how I train every body part. I train full body 6 days a week, take 1 rest day a week where I just go for a run. And I train each body part for about 4 sets of 8 to 15 reps, and I know that's a pretty big range, but it really depends on the body part, the exercise, the weight, etc. Just a disclaimer too, this works for me. I don't know if it's optimal or suboptimal. I don't know. Just because it works for me doesn't mean it'll work for you, and just because what works for you may not work for me, disclaimer out of the way. Hey, me again. So I just wanted to interject here real quick and explain actually the mentality behind why I train that way. So in the mornings I go for my run, 6 kilometers, which is roughly 4 miles with 2.5 pounds strapped to each foot. And then later I lift weights, full body in the way that I explained before. And then finally I do my boxing work. And the reason why I do all of that and then my boxing last is because my training is focused on tiring me out. I want to be really tired when I start fighting because I want to get used to the feeling of fighting tired. Anyone can fight fresh. It's what you can do when you're dead exhausted and breathing heavy that separate contenders from champions. And so when I'm in the ring and I get really tired and I'm exhausted, it's not a feeling that is foreign to me. It's like, okay, I've been here before, I've trained like this, I know how to push through this, right? The real training starts when you're tired. Anyone can fight fresh. The real training starts when you're tired. It's what you can do when you're tired that matters. It's like, I think Ali was like, I only count the reps when they start to hurt because those are the only ones that matter. It's similar thing to that. So I just kind of wanted to clear that up. I'm not training to build muscle. I'm training to tire myself out. Building muscle is just a bonus on top of all of that. Now back to past me. But even in terms of kind of a bodybuilder split, things like push-pull legs or upper body, lower body, whatever, right? I do have a friend, his name's Brian, and I've met a lot of other, you know Brian, but I've met a lot of other people, a lot of other boxers who train in a much more traditional split that do train arms, and my friend Brian, he has full-blown arm day. In fact, when quarantine started, he would train arms multiple times a day because he didn't really have access to a gym. He had bands and dumbbells, right? So one of the main things that he could train to keep his strength up was arms, and that was never a problem for him. In fact, his best punch, in my opinion, is his jab. He has a really nice, quick, fast, stiff jab that has really fucking thrown back my neck more than a couple times. So I don't really understand why this would be a hindrance. Again, if we're talking just training arms in general, yes, training arms to the extent that a bodybuilder would to get size is not what you want to do, but both Frank and Jonni said that you shouldn't train arms at all, and I don't agree with that. Now, maybe there's more, biological reasons, kinesiology and anatomy and stuff that I am not privy to. I am very well versed in the sport of boxing, and maybe there's a on paper reason why you shouldn't do it. I'm not, Jonni has a lot more experience with crafting the human body than I do. It's just I am a boxer. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a kinesiologist. I'm not a personal trainer. I am a boxer. And so it's really interesting to me because the excuse they give, right, that both of them say is that, doing stuff like this is working your arms. Like, this is essentially flexing your arm. When you throw punches, jab, cross, hook, and even uppercuts, right, you're moving and extending and flexing your arms. But the issue is that those are not the muscles that really get worked when you throw punches. When I'm throwing punches like this, right, hooks, jabs, straights, right, what's really getting worked are my shoulders and my back. That is why a lot of boxers, my back, I think, is one of my best features, and I think one of the reasons for that is all the punching. In fact, there is a muscle that I think helps with, giving you that winged look, help building the lats. I'm not entirely sure which one it is because I'm doing this off the top of my head, and I didn't bother doing any research before I turned on the camera. But it's called the boxer's muscle. You can look it up, and the reason why it's called the boxer's muscle is because that is the muscle that is most worked when you throw punches. And so it's really interesting because he says, well, yes, this is technically true. You are flexing your arms when you do this. If you stand in front of a mirror, say, and you do this, right, for a minute, right, you do this, not me, because most people don't understand how much energy it takes to punch for a minute straight. I can do this for 3 minutes, no problem, but you probably can't. So if you were able to do this, right, for a minute solid, your arms wouldn't feel tired. It would be your shoulders that would get tired first. So sure, you are technically flexing your arms when you're throwing punches, but that would be more like an accessory work than it is the main muscle that is driving the arm. It's like, it's not the main muscle that is getting worked when you throw a punch. So I wouldn't say that throwing punches necessarily replaces doing arms. The only punch that I can really feel it in my arms is uppercuts, because if you look at this, you're basically, again, if I really exaggerated, you're basically doing bicep curls, right? And that is really the only muscle that is where I can really feel it in my arms when I throw punches. And again, you have to do it really hard. Like this, I can do this for hours and not feel a single thing. If you really want to feel the strain in your arms, you have to do it kind of like a Ryan Garcia type thing, where you're like, right? You have to do that. right? And most people don't do that in actual fights. It's not it's really just to show off. The super fast Ryan Garcia uppercuts is really just to show off. The only person I've ever really seen pull something similar to that off was Roy Jones Jr. But again, it's not something that you do super often. So I would just like with this video to ask Jonni to elaborate a little bit more on that, because I've never heard it. I've never heard that is a completely new take to me, and I've been boxing for almost 2 decades now. And it's been my life since I was 5 years old. And I've heard all these different things in terms of both building up your body and boxing. Things like you should never switch hit, because when you get, because you should always stay in this stance. And then if you get caught like this while you're switching stances, you won't be on balance and you're going to fall over. I've had things where it's like you should never ever be flat footed. You always want to be on your toes. And there are things that I agree and I disagree. I think there are places where you can be flat-footed, and there are places where you can be on your toes. Same thing with switch hitting. It's all about even something as basic as never ever drop your hands. There are times where you can drop your hands. That is just something we say to beginners because they're not good enough yet to distinguish when is a good time to drop your hands, right? So I've heard all this different stuff that you never always throw a punch in this specific way, never vary it up, and all these other kind of bro science, for lack of a better term, things in boxing, but I have never heard do not train arms. If you ask me, if someone came up to me and said, Eli, I am a boxer and I am wondering, is it bad for me to train arms? I would say no. Go ahead, train arms to your heart's content. Because again, as long as you are not, massive Jorgen von Strangle biceps where you can't move, like you physically are limiting your own movement because of how much muscle you have, you should be fine. And they do say that. Both Jonni and Frank say that you shouldn't train like a bodybuilder, but they also say that it would be more beneficial to just not train arms at all. And I disagree. I don't really see there being any actual negative effects from you training arms if you are a boxer, so long as you don't go to the extremes. And hell, even if you go to the extremes, maybe it'll work for you, right? There's a lot of things in boxing that boxing is a sport where if it works for you, then you can do it. If it doesn't work for you, then you can't. If maybe having big arms helps you protect your body more or something. I don't know. But there's a lot of things that in boxing that you can just say that shouldn't work, but it does. 2 people I can point to is Prince Nassim Hamed and Emmanuel Augustus. Their fighting styles are things that just shouldn't work, and yet they make them work. So I don't always rule stuff out, but in general, as long as you don't go to like bodybuilding levels of extreme muscle, which it's relatively hard to do anyway when you're boxing because you do a lot of cardio. Cardio is very important when you fight. You should be fine training arms. If you were a boxer, you should not worry at all about getting too muscular or hurting yourself training arms. So long as you do it smart, you're not ego lifting, you're not trying to break the strict curl world record or whatever, go ahead and have fun training arms. But that is really all I have to say for this video. I hope it was entertaining, and I leave you with this.
Shadow boxing is great for warming up, getting your heart rate up. It's good, you're moving around a lot, it keeps you more functional. That's fun, and I completely believe that he does something like this. Would I recommend doing that? For sure, if you know how to box. Because if you don't know how to box, shadow boxing is really weird. You see those guys in the gym, they're punching stuff, and they've never been coached before, and they're just, don't be that guy.
Because that is 100% true. Like, if you do not know how to box, if you do not know how to shadow box, don't go around and try to do it or pretend like you do, because anyone with even one working eyeball can see that you have no clue what you're doing. You look incredibly awkward, and to anyone who has actual training, you look even more like a complete dumbass. But that's really all I have to say. Until next time, I'm not dead yet, and if you aren't either, there is always a tomorrow waiting for you. Jonni, Jonathan, more boxing videos, please. Till next time.